Welcome back to the Fuel Your Legacy podcast. Each week, we expose the faulty foundational mindsets of the past and rebuild a newer, stronger foundation essential in creating your meaningful legacy. We've got a lot of work to do, so let's get started. As much as you like this podcast, I'm certain that you're going to love the book that I just released on Amazon, Fuel Your Legacy, The 9 Pillars to Build a Meaningful Legacy. I wrote this to share with you the experiences that I had while I was identifying my identity, how I began to create my meaningful legacy, and how you can create yours. You're going to find this book on Kindle, Amazon, and as always on my website, samknickerbocker.com. Welcome back to the Fuel Your Legacy show. Today we have another incredible, in fact, epic guest, and super excited to have him on here. Every time when I get offers of people to come on the podcast, I get to kind of pre-screen them and make sure it's somebody that I want. They have a message that makes sense with the message and the mission of the podcast, which is the core belief is that you're worth being remembered. You know, that there's a reason that you were placed on this earth, and that value can be shared with the people around you if you choose to. If you choose not to, that's fine too. But for purpose of this podcast, we're trying to help you and encourage you to go share your gifts with the world. So that is what we're going to be talking about today. And our guest is Zander Sprague. He is out of California, but he's a very accomplished person, has done, spoken all over the world, has books that he's published. He's a licensed professional clinical counselor, which although I never got licensed, I studied neuropsychology, so I'm always interested to see what other people, how they see the mind and how that impacts our experience on this beautiful planet. And yeah, he's just done tons of work with different individuals, and he's focused on helping you have the most epic life possible. How do you create a world of just happiness and joy and peace and fulfillment? So that's why I have him on here, because I think that's a huge part of legacy is, are you living your life to the fullest? It's interesting. I was listening to a podcast earlier today with Robin Sharma, and he's like, I've given up on legacy. I don't think it's important. And I think, okay, I get it. But the reality is, because you've given up on legacy, everybody's going to remember who Robin Sharma is. There's going to be books written about him, and there already are books written about him and his philosophies because he's writing them. So although he doesn't care about it, he's living his life to the fullest. The natural result of him living his life to the fullest in an epic way is that he will be remembered for his nowness, right? The ability to be present now. And so that's what we want to encourage is be present now. Don't live your life to be remembered, okay? Live your life the way you are meant to live your life, and I believe that you will be remembered. There's a big difference between living your life to be remembered and living your life and by consequence being remembered. Okay, so I'm finding I need to clarify this due to some things going on in my own life, as well as listening to that podcast. I was like, okay, we can be more clear about what the focus is. Live your life to the fullest, get as much fulfillment, share your gifts, share those things, and I believe that as a result, you will be remembered. Don't live in the future, live in the now. So with that being said, Zander, hopefully I set the stage for you. I'm super excited to hear your story and get into some of the details there. Go ahead and share with us kind of where you grew up, why you are where you are, why you decided to move not just in the personal development space, but really helping families and individuals live more epic lives, and how can we learn from that? So, and then where are you headed as well? I'd love to hear that.
All right. Well, thanks so much for having me on. I'm really excited to be here. Will, let's go in the Wayback Machine. I grew up in a small town outside of Boston called Sherburne, Massachusetts. It was a beautiful, bucolic place. I really enjoyed living there. As I look back, this idea of epic and epic dreams and stuff, I look back and say, there's so many things in my life, and frankly, everyone's life, that are epic. And things that were really epic in my life as, kind of growing up. My father was a state legislator, and I campaigned with him from a young age. And I had all these really cool experiences. I got to be in parades. I got to uh, be up on stage with him. I was exposed to talking to adults at a young age. And that was really kind of formative for me, because I think through that experience, I really discovered that I like being in front of people. I like presenting. And, I went to school in the Boston area. And high school, I was up in New Hampshire, in Dublin, New Hampshire, which is the highest elevated town in all of New England, home to Yankee Magazine, but more importantly, Mount Monadnock, the most climbed mountain in the world. It used to be second to Mount Fuji, but they put a road on Mount Fuji, so it doesn't count anymore. Mount Monadnock gets the most climbed mountain. So it's really cool. I went to college at Pitzer College in Claremont, California. That's in Southern California. I love that. That was a huge difference from growing up in New England. It was very intentional. Truth be told, I hate the weather in New England. That's why I don't live there. It stinks. I don't like snow. I don't like humidity. I don't like all the work that goes into having all of those seasons. It's great when the leaves turn colors, but they fell off the tree and I had to rake them. Snow fell out of the sky, I had to shovel it, Along the way, I was able to been very fortunate, travel to many places in the world and see really unique things. I've been to the jungles of Venezuela. That was epic. I got to, I've been in the Sahara Desert and in Morocco. That was incredible. One of the things that when I look at my life and say, Zander, what's epic, right? I believe unfailingly in myself and have had a series of jobs that I honestly shouldn't have had because I wasn't qualified to do it. But because I believe so much in my ability to do whatever I set my mind to, I got these jobs. I worked in high tech for 22 years. I majored in history and psychology, and yet I was in high tech. I was a quality assurance engineer, a software engineer. I worked on the help desk, the Unix help desk of the fixed income trading floor at Fidelity Investments. And a really funny story there. In the interview, they asked me if I knew what Unix was. It's an operating system, but my honest to God answer in the interview was, is it two emasculated men from Rome? I had no idea. A eunuch is obviously something from Roman times. That's what I said is the plural of a eunuch. And yet I got hired. Why? Because I believe in me. And I believe that not only can I be epic, but I am epic without sounding too self-aggrandizing, because I've achieved so many things in my life. I spent 17 years teaching people how to use software. I was a technical instructor. That's a really challenging job because I would get hired. I would have to quickly assimilate a whole lot of information and turn around and teach it. I've been running my own company. I've been a motivational speaker for 20 years. I have 2 books that are out. I have a third one that will be coming out at probably the end of the year. It's all done. I'm just sort of marketing my latest book. Epic begins with one step forward: how to plan, achieve, and enjoy the journey. And it's incredible. I'm an international best-selling author. If you told me that when I was 18, Sam, I would have said, you're on drugs, you're drunk, you're just like, there's no way. I'm not an author. I'm a I'm a talker, not a typer. And yet I've written books. And so it's just incredible. And I want to share all of that with the world. I think we all have epic dreams, things that we say, I'd like to go to this place. I'd like to do this thing. And yet we don't do it. one of the things I've discovered in my work with people is we are our own biggest dream killer. And that makes me sad. We shouldn't be killing our own dreams. In terms of building a legacy, I think showing up every day who you are and believing in what you're doing is really the key. And to me, what legacy is just each and every day being yourself and letting the world see it. Don't worry about the people who don't believe in you. You don't really need those people. As Eleanor Roosevelt so famously said, no one can make you feel bad without your permission. So don't give them permission.
Yeah, absolutely. It really can be that simple of a understanding that you actually are in control. Some people don't even understand that they actually have options. It's fascinating. One of my previous guests, her name's Kylie June Hansen. I don't remember the episode, but you can go look it up. But she actually studied anthropology, but more specifically, like her subset that she specialized in was anthropology of language, and how many people in the different language cohorts, people in lower class systems, we'll just call them systems because they're all over in the world, not just in America, but anywhere, they literally don't have the language of success. They don't know that they have options. They don't know the right questions to ask themselves to spur on the right answers to get to where they're going. They just simply don't have even the words. They don't know the words to success. And so somebody who's privileged in having experienced that, I don't think it comes down to race or color or anything. It comes down to situational. But that type of privilege of being exposed to information helps you gain the right questions to ask, and everybody's answers to the questions are going to be probably different, but in my experience, they're all within the same vein, right? Of seeking for one of like a few different things: freedom, truth, peace, joy, happiness, right? However you label that feeling for you, it's going to be pretty much one of those few feelings that you're ultimately seeking for. So I want to talk about this. You grew up in Boston. I'm with you as far as not liking the weather. I live in Arizona now, and as I say that, it's literally raining outside. I don't know why it's raining in Arizona, but it is. It's probably for the best. My wife likes it cool. I like it warm, so I have my space heater on. But what have you learned about because I don't know how it is in California where you're at, but I know up there you do have seasons. You do have the snow, the icy, the cold, whatever that looks like. Then you have spring where there's a bunch of rain. Then you have summer for a few months, if that. And then you have fall and things start to change again and it goes back into winter. What have you learned about life, and specifically where it comes to being epic, that there's do you think it's more be epic in each season, or there's seasons of your life where you do more quote unquote epic things or live a more epic life, and then there's other seasons where you're preparing for such? Like how have you seen that the seasons of life coincide with the seasons of our world?
Well, that's an interesting question, and I think I just wanted to touch on one thing that you talked about earlier, which is really important. I think people forget that they have choice in their life. Now, choice is so powerful with how you interpret something. If you remember that you have a choice. Now, look, I am not all sunshine and unicorns. Sometimes the choices we have are bad and worse. Totally get it, okay? There are absolutely lots of people that they don't have a good choice. They wish they had a third choice, but they don't. But if you empower yourself and say, I recognize that I have a choice of A or B, and I don't want either one, but I will choose one of them. Then you're empowering yourself to define this situation and not have it define you. Now, a specific personal thing that happened is 25 years ago, my older sister was murdered. And obviously, that was a horrific experience. I'm doing much better now. I wrote a book about my experience as a sibling survivor because there just isn't a lot of literature. There's not a lot of help for that specific group of people. And interesting statistic, there's about 1 million new sibling survivors in the US every single year. And yet there's very little help in the mental health field for them. There's not a lot of literature for people. There's not a way to sort of for people to get together. But what I decided after Lucy was murdered was that I was going to define the loss. It wasn't going to define me. So you talk about seasons. Yeah, that was certainly I'll say a bleak, frozen time. I do think we all have seasons of our life. And I don't know, I think it kind of rotates and it kind of depends. Some months are really great, some months aren't as great. Some days are better, some not as good. However, I think as I look at my own life and say, what are the seasons? I think I can interpret whether it's good or bad. So, for example, Sam, you mentioned that it's raining. Your wife thinks that it's good because it will cool it down. You think it's not so good because you're cold, right? I read this really great book years ago called The Diamond Cutter, and it was about this Buddhist monk who went to work in the diamond cutting industry in New York. And one of the things he says is that in Buddhism, there's this idea that nothing is inherently good or bad. It's how we are interpreting it. So we'll use the weather analogy. I think that's always a good one. You interpret the rain as not being great for you. Your wife sees it as great. It's a beautiful sunny day, a little cold here in Northern California today for California, but the sun is out. And I'm like, well, that's great. That's awesome. But we also have a drought going on, so we actually need the rain. And so depending on it could be a bad thing that the sun is out because, oh my gosh, we need rain. Or I go, well, the sun is out and I can go be outside, and that's awesome. I think that's really important when we talk about the seasons. What are our seasons? Well, I guess we get to choose what those are. And I think we cycle through all of these seasons, sometimes quicker than others. Oh my God, it's summer and it's great. We all have the seasons that we like. So for me, I love spring and summer. Fall is good here in Northern California. It's actually some of the hottest time of the year, and technically our fall. It's great. Look, I love it. We have 2 seasons, sunny and rain.
Exactly. Yeah, I think it's interesting that the seasons question, I haven't spent a lot of time contemplating it because it just came up in this interview. So I'm grateful for it, but I'm glad I'm here to process it through the conversation. Because I completely agree. I think that at first when you said, oh, well, you have 2 choices between bad and worse, I actually would disagree with that, in that I think that we get to define, as you mentioned, our experience, and I choose to believe that there's something to learn from every experience. Always. There's always something to learn. And
Absolutely.
The choice is, are you going to choose to let the circumstance serve you, or are you going to choose to not let it serve you? Right? Although I don't like the cold, and although I don't like the rain a ton, The rain in Arizona is much warmer than the rain in Utah, where I came from, and it allows me to keep my sprinklers off a little bit longer. So there are benefits, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And we get to create the story around those things. What I've found in my own life, and I've got coaching on this from my wife, because I went from, I don't know if I would say I was always a pessimist I don't know if I would say I was ever really a pessimist, but I definitely have constructed my environment and my mental fortitude to see the positive in everything. Like everything that my life happens, I recorrect it to a positive most of the time before I can even think about what's happening, you know? And the benefit there is I'm generally happy, I'm generally joyful, I'm generally experiencing fulfillment, and I think there's health there and joy there, but the other side of that is what I've experienced is some people struggle to connect because they just see me as this positive person all the time, well processed, and so I can keep my mental psyche healthy. I think there are some times where it's good to sit in the cold, icy pain. Although I appreciate you sharing that about your sister, I'll share about my sister, and invite you to go listen to her music and stuff. She just passed away on Thursday.
I'm so sorry.
Last week. And thankfully she wasn't murdered or anything, and she just passed away. There was some health challenges and stuff, but she was getting better. It was very shocking. It was no expectation that what has happened would have happened. And so, yeah, sibling survivor. It wasn't like from a murder, but it's still, I'm sibling survivor. I've never thought of myself in that cohort, and that there should be support for that demographic. But right now, I feel like it'd be great to have some support, you know, in that demographic of like, how do you process through this? Your little sister just passed away, and how does that affect you, you know? And it's interesting to see. I'm the 7th of 11 kids, so we got 2 parents and 10 of us left, and it's interesting to see the different ways that we all are processing through this experience that we've been given, and what we're going to allow it to mean for us moving forward in our lives. And I think that's where maybe the stemming of this question came in, is like, what's the value of the dark, bleak moments, and allowing yourself to really be present in the darkness and in the feeling of hopelessness, in the feeling there, and allow yourself to really experience those feelings rather than shifting away to protect yourself emotionally or mentally. What's the value of allowing yourself to be there?
Okay, well, so first of all, I'm so very sorry for your loss. I will tell you there are resources available to you, and you know, after this, you love to have a conversation with you, so I could share all of that with you, because I think it's important not only for you but also for your brothers and sisters. It's interesting that you bring that up, because I talk about epic unexpected in my book, and I talk about losing my sister and how we have unexpected things in our life. And here are a couple of things I want to share with you personally, but also with the audience, which is some myths about grief and loss. Okay, first of all, there is no proper, that's for those of you just listening, that's the air quote proper way to grieve. Okay, it's your journey, and the journey that you take, Sam, and your brothers and sisters take, and your parents take, are different, and there isn't a right way to do it. It's your journey. So, you know, it's hopefully you're not doing self-destructive things. I don't believe that you are. As long as you're not doing something that's self-destructive, your grief is your grief. If someone comes up to you and says, "Oh, haven't you gotten over losing your sister?" No.
Yeah.
We're working our way through it, some days better than others. I'm still 25 years later working my way through the loss of my sister. Interesting little fact. The longest relationships we have in our life are our siblings. Our siblings are, by and large, our best friends. We may not always have the best relationship with them, but your sister knew everything about you. She had all the dirt on you, and you had their dirt on her. And if you think about when you got into arguments, you don't start off nice when you're arguing with your siblings. No, you're swinging for the fences. You're going for the grand slam of I'm going to shut you down. And you say the thing you know is going to hurt them. They say the thing that's going to hurt you. That's part of that sibling relationship, right? But more importantly, I don't have a miracle sentence that will make it better for you. And you don't have one that will make it better for me. But that's okay. Unfortunately, here in the US, we are absolutely terrible when it comes to death. We actually treat it like it's the most communicable disease in the world. Oh my gosh, you experienced death. I can't get close. I might catch it. And the problem with that is no one knows. I don't want to say the wrong thing. Well, you want to know what? It's kind of torturous when you know that someone else knows, but they're not saying anything. And the fact of the matter is, if you give permission to people to say, look, there isn't a miracle sentence, and that's okay. But let's acknowledge that this person is gone. One of the things that I like to encourage anyone who's experienced loss is celebrate the rainbow that was your sister's life, not just the dot at the end. Because I can imagine if she was a singer, that there's a beautiful amount for you to celebrate. And I can tell you from being farther down the road, it is so much better for me to celebrate Lucy and do good things in her name than to focus on the fact that she's not here.
I agree with you. If you do want to go visit her, anybody who's listening to this, if you want to go visit her website, it's DanitaKnickerbocker.com.
I will definitely check that out.
And so anybody's welcome to go there. Danita is how you spell our first name. Danita, Knickerbocker.com. You can go and listen to our music and experience that. But yeah, it's just an interesting thing. I completely agree. In fact, the post I made on my Facebook post, I tend to personally be very, I don't know if very is the right word, but I'm pretty comfortable with my darkness and my shadows in my life, and my just speaking them. You know, this is what is, and I'm not scared of what is. It's painful what is sometimes, but it is what is. And so I actually made a Facebook post of all of the turning points in my life that she's helped with, and ultimately a lot of this show, even the Fuel Your Legacy show, is the whole thing is born out of a very painful experience between my sister and I.
Right.
Like excruciating painful that never, I mean, you'd have to go listen to her voice to experience the contrast of what I'm going to share with you, because then you'll be like, yeah, Sam, you actually were a jerk, you know, and I was then. Well, the cluster of cells that 12-year-old was, was not the kindest, but he was processing through his own pain at that point in time. But I used to tell her how terrible her voice was, how she should never sing again, sound like cats going down chalkboard, fingernails on chalkboard. It was terrible. And as a result of that, not that I controlled her choices, but as a result of that, some of the choices she made in life were to not sing publicly. She recorded tons of music, but when she would get up in front of people, she was not as confident. She still sang occasionally publicly, but she was not as confident in front of people as a result of that. And we had many discussions, and we healed our emotions from it, but there's still things that go into those choices. And so a big part of fueling your legacy is I made a commitment when I was 14 years old to help other people never be scared to live who they are, regardless if there's another Sam in the corner being a dick and saying rude things, like, don't listen to Sam. Listen to your soul and like be yourself. So a lot of this show is born out of the pain of our relationship. And I think that it's the best way for me to honor it and process through what happened is to share that pain with the world, which seems interesting for me, at least. It was counterintuitive, but it's what came out. So how does that coincide then with, I want to further this conversation because I think this is another huge part of my progression as an individual, and what I think a lot of people can benefit from. But I want you to kind of juxtapose yourself next to somebody else that you might know. And this isn't, again, it's not to say anything bad about anybody. I want to be clear here. But I do understand there's differences in people and personality. So your dad's running in the state legislature and running for offices. And that puts you in positions to have more conversations with adults at a very young age. Yep. You may know people who didn't get that same opportunity to be regularly conversing with adults and dealing with adult concepts and issues and struggles and having not just the issues, hearing about the issues that adults go through, but also having that mentorship from people who have been before you. They didn't have that opportunity to have that mentorship of people who have already made certain mistakes, much like, we're just going through this. You're 20 years down the road of a similar experience. May not be the same, but a similar experience. And so what's the value that you've retrospectively been able to see of those early moments in your life where you had those adult conversations, you were able to interact with adults, versus maybe somebody that you were aware of that didn't have those same opportunities, and what was the difference of growth, both spiritually and mentally, throughout your life?
Well, I think, a big thing was for my whole entire life, I've been able to and comfortable having conversations with adults, which if I look at, I'll just choose me in sixth grade, right? I would be able to talk to my teachers comfortably. And if there was an issue, felt comfortable to talk to them, whereas classmates of mine were like, "Oh my God, I can't believe that you're talking to Mr. Hopkins about that paper is we don't have enough time or whatever that may be." And I think that exposure and that understanding that even if an adult is, twice as big as you and might be male and have a big booming voice and stuff, they're still people and you can talk to them, and they actually oftentimes enjoy talking to younger people and they want to help. I think in general, people actually want to help. But all too often, one, we're afraid to ask for help because we think it shows weakness, but it really doesn't. What it shows is I don't know everything. As an entrepreneur, I have spent, unfortunately, countless hours trying to solve issues that I didn't resolve. And then I finally decide to ask someone for help, and they go, "Oh, yeah, I did. I ran into that last week. And here's what I did," or "Here's the tool that could help you." And it solves the problem in 5 minutes. Yet I just spent 2 hours trying to solve it myself. We can't, I think this idea that we have to be perfect, and that ties into the whole epic, this idea of epic. And when I talk about epic, it is whatever you want. Yes, it does, in my mind, have greatness and grandeur. But I like to say that epic stands for every pilgrimage includes commitment. And I'm not a particularly religious person. I mean, I'm not an atheist, but I'm not like, but for me, we are on these pilgrimages, and pilgrimage is in and of itself a journey, a quest to get to someplace. And if your journey is you really always wanted to go to Australia, right? Well, there's steps that you have to do, and there's commitment that you have to have in order to make that happen. I was on a 7-year-long journey through graduate school, and then I had to get 3,000 hours of internship before I could get licensed. I finished that up in February of 2020. In March, I couldn't do anything that I said I was going to do once I got done my internship. I couldn't take the licensing exam. I couldn't go out and speak to people. I couldn't do any of the things that I planned. That sucked. However, as I was sitting in my apartment trying to figure out what I was going to do, I did actually have this epiphany that became the book. That Epic begins with one step forward. In the past, I've run marathons. I was fortunate enough to be able to run the 2014 Boston Marathon. Now, let me be clear. I got in on a sponsor exemption that my younger sister was nice enough to help me get because she did work for Adidas, and Adidas is a major sponsor of that. I did not time qualify. There's no way I was going to time qualify. I don't run that fast, but I still got to run it, and it was awesome. It was incredible. Really like beyond, not even just bucket list, but like holy grail. Like this was awesome. Now, I grew up watching the Boston Marathon. So in my young mind, I'm like, oh, that might be fun to do someday. But running a marathon is just really hard. 26.2 miles is a really long way.
Even if you're walking, it's a long way.
Huh? Yeah, I mean, just, yes. And it's my point was, they say every journey begins with one step forward, and it's true. And I think as we look at our epic, whatever your epic may be, understand that it's not nearly as hard as we think it would be if we just take that one step. Now, going back to what you asked me about that, talking to adults. I've been fortunate to be able to talk to some famous people, and it's always interesting because you think, oh my God, here's this person. They're so important, and yet I'll just go up and talk to them because they're a person just like me. They got up this morning. They put their shoes on one at a time. Let me go talk to them, right? And I had an opportunity to meet Zig Ziglar, who's a very famous motivational speaker. Couldn't have been nicer. And I went up and I asked him. I said, what's one of the things that really bothers you? As like kind of a famous speaker, as a person who's well known. And he's like, the number of times in a day that people come up and go, oh my gosh, you're Zig Ziglar. He goes, as if I forgot who I was and you need to tell me my own name, And I thought that was a really funny answer but it's so true. We see someone famous, oh my gosh, you're Samuel Knickerbocker, right? Did you forget who you were? Did you have a moment where all of a sudden you're like, who am I? Did I have, a moment of amnesia? No, but, and I think that's what's important is we all can be afraid, but the funny thing is when we actually take the step forward, it's not nearly as hard as we thought. And a lot of times it's a lot of fun. when I was 12, I had the opportunity to jump off a 60-foot cliff into water. And I stood on the edge and I was really scared. And I just went for it. And I had this really horrifying thought as I was going through the air, which is, I'm fully committed to this. I can't do anything to stop what's happening, right? Just think about it. I mean,
there's not much you can do. I've done
gravity's one of those things, you know. I mean, it took hold and I couldn't stop it. I couldn't put my hands out. I was going, and I went into the water and I was fine. I really loved it. I discovered that I actually really like to occasionally scare myself really badly, get that adrenaline rush. So I love to ride roller coasters. I love that initial plunge down the first hill. And I ride road bike and mountain bikes, and I like to rocket down the hill and, you know, kind of have that feeling. Skiing, you know, let's go down that Black Diamond Trail or that double Black Diamond Trail and hope that we can make it to the bottom.
Yeah, you'll make it down the bottom. It's just in what form.
Exactly.
No, I appreciate that. I think that just kind of reflecting on my experience of interacting, because I had we were homeschooled and we had a very similar experience growing up talking to adults. And I've had the same experiences in school when I did go to college and my various educational experiences. People were always my cohort. Yeah. They were always astounded by the ability to advocate for oneself, and I think that that's fascinating because what I see happening in the world a lot, and I feel like it happens more and more and more, is people choosing out of advocating for themselves. They have a problem at work. They have a problem with their spouse. They have a problem with whatever, and they don't know how to have an adult conversation, especially in conversations where it doesn't end in agreement. The ones where it ends in agreement, those are wonderful, right? Those are that when you say, oh, it turns out easier than it was. Well, sometimes, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it ends up being more confrontational, more upsetting, more drama than it was before you opened your mouth. And those are times where you just learning how to have those adult conversations, I think, is really helpful. And I think that it's something that it's missing in our world. It's just interesting. I don't know if that's the marker of getting our children into more adult conversations at a sooner age would help assist that conversation later on in life.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. You talk about, sort of advocating and stuff, and there's sort of two parts to this. First of all, I went to a tiny little boarding school in New Hampshire for high school, and there were 100 students, and it's, a lot of snow. So in the winter, there's a lot of time indoors. I mean, yes, you're going outdoors, but look, if it's 14 degrees out, you're not like, hey, let's go hang outside for 3 hours, right? Mm-hmm. So I went back to an alumni weekend, and there was a freshman I was talking to, a little snotty, I'll say. I was like, can you tell me one thing that's valuable that you learned? And I said, absolutely. I learned how to get along with people who I don't necessarily agree with. And that's been a tool that I've used every single day. And I think that was hadn't really thought about it, but I thought that's true. There were people I didn't really like, but I had to figure out how to get along with them because I saw them a minimum of 4 times a day and most likely more often because they'd be in a class or on a sports team, or we'd be hanging out, watching, TV or a movie or a pool or whatever. And there just wasn't room to not figure out how to get along with people because that wasn't an option. I had 2 daughters when they were little. My parents lived in Boston, and be there for Christmas. I had this like wonderful Christmas party, lots of people. And my girls would just go around and talk to people. So they kind of also grew up with this going around, and people would come up, oh my gosh, I met your daughters. They were so nice. We had such a great conversation. And I honestly didn't check on them, but they were fine. They were having conversations. My oldest daughter was born with a partial unilateral hearing loss. So for her whole life, she's advocated for herself in the classroom with teachers to say, I didn't hear that. She wears a hearing aid, and she would explain to her classmates all about the hearing aid and why she had it and what was going on and stuff. And I always was so proud that she would advocate for herself and say, I can't hear what you're saying. I need you to not stand on my right side because I can't hear as well. Can you not walk around the room or whatever? So I think that's good. And I think you are absolutely right that people think that confrontation is to be avoided at all cost. And that's not necessarily, look, I'm not looking to go, have confrontation, but it does happen. And there's a lot of learning that goes in there. And I think there's a lot more learning that goes in when a conversation doesn't go well. Perhaps you go back and you think, and maybe you didn't hear in the moment what someone said, but you think about what they said and you can appreciate their viewpoint and you can agree to disagree. You know?
Absolutely. And I think that's been a big element of my life. And it's just interesting to see where a lot of these things are sourcing from in my experience of this life. And I'm just more reflective now than normal, I think, because of other situations. But it is fascinating to think, how can I provide value to my children in a bigger way to be able to have a healthy self-concept? Somebody like, hey, I have enough respect for myself that I'm going to advocate for myself. I'm not going to be scared if somebody confronts me. I completely agree. I don't seek out confrontation at all. I don't enjoy it in the slightest. I do know people who do, and it blows my mind that they enjoy the confrontation. And on the same hand, I don't shy away from confrontation. I'd rather just go confront things directly as soon as they come up, because it comes with a mutual respect of, I can understand that you have your perspective and you have your desires and your wants. I learned from a friend, he said that he's a very successful businessman in the tech and healthcare industries, kind of a mixture of tech and health. And he said the thing that's most true that he's found about people is that they are expedient, right? They are going to do what they believe is in their best interests every time. And virtually never will somebody do something that is not what they believe is in their best interest. Even when they're being charitable or intentionally doing something that you might look at and say, that's not in your best interest. Why are you doing that? They're doing it because they believe it gives them some form of moral standing or pride or ego, or like they're doing it for some ulterior motive. And it may not be financial. It may not be a negative ulterior motive, but people are charitable because they believe that they should be inside themselves, right? And so they are going to feel better about themselves being charitable than not being charitable. Okay, so they're going to do what they believe is in their best interest every time. Like, it's not like maybe somebody's going to intentionally do something that's not in their best interest. I don't believe for a second that will ever happen. They will do what they believe is in their best interest. Now, from an outside perspective, you're like, that's really not in your best interest, friend. But they will believe it when they do it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think also that we all do things that other people ascribe charity, empathy, altruism, greatness, whatever. And oftentimes that is a byproduct, but not the actual reason you're doing that. So an example was when I lived in Boston, I volunteered at Boston Children's Hospital. And people's like, oh my gosh, that's so great that you volunteer. And that was them saying it. I always kind of felt guilty. The reason I was doing it was because I really like little kids and I wanted an opportunity to be able to go, help out kids who were sick. I always kind of felt guilty because I'm like, I'm doing this because it's fulfilling a need, just like you said, that I have to, I would hold the babies and I loved holding the babies because their babies are super cute and, and I would say, no, the reason I'm doing it is because I like I like babies. I like to hold babies, and if they're sick and their parents need a break, I can do something nice. That's a byproduct. And so, I think a lot of times people will do stuff. They'll support a cause because they believe in the cause, and their support may be incredibly beneficial. But you're right, they're probably doing it because it's fulfilling a need that they have. And I don't know that that's necessarily bad. It kind of makes sense from a psychological standpoint to say, well, of course we do things that are beneficial to us. Frankly, that's true in nature. Right.
Right. Absolutely.
And I mean, an animal is going to do, what it needs to do to survive. And frankly, if it's depending on what animals we're talking about, if it's a hierarchy or whatever, if you're stronger and you get to be the alpha, you're probably going to do it. Mm-hmm. You don't see a lot of big male lions going, no. Here, you, Sam. I mean, I'm stronger than you. I can beat you, but no, you take over. I'm just going to lie over here.
Right, exactly. And I think it's important to recognize it's neither good or bad. And we've kind of already talked about that.
Yeah.
But it just is. And the sooner that we recognize that it just is, it actually helps us understand other people's actions far better. And helps me, I can speak for myself, be a more compassionate individual, because now the question is not, why are you doing what you're doing from a place of frustration, but more of, what in your mind is that action serving? Especially destructive, harmful actions. It's like there's a deeper reason that you're doing this. What is that? Like, how can we help heal those deeper reasons that people choose to be destructive for themselves? They believe that that's serving a purpose. I mean, they're doing something to serve a purpose. So what purpose are they trying to serve? And are we able to relieve some of those underlying things that need attention?
Yeah, absolutely. And really what I think you're talking about, and I've certainly I talk about this, which is get curious. When you don't understand, get curious. Because there's not judgment in curiosity, but it's like, I want to understand what's going on for you. I'm curious to understand this because I don't. And be very intentional, because it can sound, when you ask questions, it can sound as if you're people might interpret it as an attack on them or whatever. And I'm like, I'm getting curious. I literally stated, I'm curious to understand this because I don't.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and
I want to learn, and I want to see how I might be able to support you. And you might not even have ever thought about, why am I doing this self-destructive thing? But maybe that shifts for them that someone is listening,
Mm-hmm.
and we can get, like the curiosity is actually, it can be a lot of fun because you're opening yourself up to saying, I want to learn. I don't understand.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that you mentioned something that's absolutely crucial in the curiosity endeavor. When you do choose to get curious, because of the world we live in, the difference between curiosity and antagonism is really small.
It's a very thin line.
It's a very thin line, and then it's an extremely blurry thin line. You know,
Yes.
and so just be aware that in the effort to nail that down, I err on the side of always stating my intention very boldly up front and over expressing, hey, look, I am curious. I can't, my tone may not come out the way I want it to. I'm not the greatest with the English language. Okay, I'll admit all of this stuff. I'm flawed as a being, but I am interested and I'm curious about this because I want to learn. It may be that we're different and we end up having different perspectives on things. But I'd love, if you're willing, to share with me your perspective, because maybe it's something I haven't thought of before.
Absolutely. I'll come back I'll reference back to choices, right? I used to work down in Silicon Valley, and I think all of us are inherently creatures of habit. We all like structure. Structure makes us feel comfortable. It's predictable. We know it, right? And oftentimes when you're driving to work or the store or wherever, you have one way, you go, well, that's how I get there, and you drive that one way. And you never entertain that there may be different paths to get to your destination. And it's only until you are actually forced into having to change your path that you then all of a sudden go, oh, wait, there is more than one way for me to get to work. And I discovered that one day because there were 2 accidents on the two possible freeways I could take, and they were shut down, and I had to take some back roads. And I discovered that even though it took a little longer, it was a much, much more enjoyable, pretty ride. And yet for 2 years, I had driven the same way to work, never for 1 second stopping to say, hey, I have a choice here, and there are different paths. Going back to what we were just talking about, that curiosity, say, maybe there is a perspective that I don't understand. Maybe there is my own life experience doesn't allow me to know about this. You talked at the beginning about success and people in certain stratifications, socioeconomic stratifications, of not really having words for success or choice or whatever, right? Again, bringing this all back together, I can't know what it's like to be a young, Mexican-American male living in an apartment in San Francisco. I don't have that perspective.
Mm-hmm. You never can, because
I can't. In the same way that I could eloquently describe what it is to run a marathon, but if you haven't done it, you won't know what that experience is. Your friends may really want to support you, but they won't know what it is to lose a sibling.
Mm-hmm.
But I do, and so that makes a connection that actually could be really, really helpful, because you're like, here's someone who's done this. They get it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. Well, we're about out of time, and I just feel like I keep talking forever because I'm totally enthralled by this conversation. But I do have a few questions for you that I think the audience would want to know. One is, when does your book come out? And I know you have other books. Where could they get more of Zander? Where could they engage with you, either on social media or in person?
Absolutely. So my book did come out February 9th. That's Epic Begins with One Step Forward. It's available on Amazon and most of the major book platforms. It's available in hardcover, softcover, and ebook. I'm working on the audiobook. And if you want to get a hold of me, just Google Zander Sprague. That's ZanderSprague. ZanderSprague.com is my website. Please contact me there. I'm Epic_begins on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn. I've tried to make it easy to find me. I'm really, I want to help people step into their epic. And, one thing I really want to say that I think is so important, I didn't get it in, but I absolutely want to get it in. There are 2 words with any of our epic journeys that are so important. Not yet. Have you done this? Not yet. Not yet is so optimistic. It says the possibility is there. And we all have, I think, not yet. It seems to be resonating with lots of people, because they're like, it gives you the permission to still be working on it, right? Before February 9th, is your book out? If I just said no, then it makes it sound like it's never coming out. Not yet. I know you wrote a book, Sam. It's really, there's a lot that goes into it. So has your book come out? Not yet. It's coming out, but it's not quite ready, right? I mean,
yeah. No, I love that. That's awesome. So here's the final question, and I just love this question because I think it really expresses kind of what I started this podcast out as. It's not about how you're intentionally trying to help people remember you as much as, are you living the life that you want to be living? And then I think it will be remembered. But in the future, let's say 6 generations from now, so this is your great-great-great-great-grandchildren sitting around a table discussing Zander and what type of impact you had, the legacy you left. What do you hope that they are contemplating or sharing about you 6 generations from now?
I hope that what they're talking about is how I helped millions of people step into their epic, how I helped change awareness for sibling survivors, and had sibling survivors be a part of that conversation, and have that loss more readily acknowledged. They're like, wow, look at the impact that Zander made to help the world be a better place, for there to be more understanding, and for this hugely underserved what was an underserved population get the help and acknowledgement that they need.
I love that. Hey, well, thank you so much, Zander, for hopping on and sharing your time with us and your thoughts and your experiences. I think experiences are so valuable, and I'm grateful for them. If you guys get the chance, please do go rate this on whatever platform you're listening to it on. Leave a comment as far as what you gained from this show, and then share it with other people. I mean, this information is incredible. I'm so grateful that I was able to have this conversation today. But there's people out there who could benefit from this show today with Zander, and I hope that you're willing to share that out and make sure that they get that opportunity to maybe receive a little healing of their own. And we'll catch you guys next time on the Fuel Your Legacy show.
Thanks for joining us. If what you heard today resonates with you, please like, comment, and share on social media. Tag me, and if you do give me a shout out, I'll give you a shout out on the next episode. Thanks to all of those who've left a review. It helps spread the message of what it takes to build a legacy that lasts. And we'll catch you next time on Fuel Your Legacy.